The Slav Defense is a popular chess opening which starts with the move d4, d5, c4, and c6. The main idea for black is to support the d5 pawn and maintain a strong pawn structure without compromising the piece activity. Like in the Queen's Gambit decline, which was e6, the bishop gets blocked, but in the Slav defense, this bishop remains open. And here, there are some variations possible. White can play c takes d5, which is the exchange variation, which we will cover later. But the main move here is knight f3. And here, there are some variations. We can play d takes c4, which is the open Slav. You can also play knight f6 or even e6, which is the semi-Slav. In this video, we will see d takes c4 and knight f6. And in the upcoming videos, we will see the semi-Slav, which is e6. Here after knight f6, knight c3, what most players do is that they play bishop to f5, which is a bad move because it allows white to play queen to b3, hitting the b7 pawn and also attacking along the center. And the best move for black is to play queen b6, and after c takes d5, you recapture. White can just take this pawn, and let's say you try to play this tricky, queen takes b3, then instead of capturing this queen, white will go with that intermezzo, knight takes f6 check, and after you recapture, white will take this queen, and the position is quite better for white. He can develop his pieces quickly, and his rook is also open, which is not good for black. So this is something you should be aware of. Now let me show you the main line of the Slav defense. So after knight f6, knight c3, and here you play d takes c4 with the idea of playing b5 to hold on to the c4 pawn and maintain a strong pawn structure along the queen side. And here the main move by white is a4, preventing your b5 push. Now you go bishop to e5, developing your bishop because he cannot play queen to b3 because of this pawn. Let's say white goes e3, trying to take this pawn, and here don't play b5 because after takes, there is a knight here which can take this pawn, so just play e6, and after let's say white recaptures, you can play bishop to b4. Let's say white castle, you develop the other knight, and after something like queen e2, trying to push this pawn, you can just move the bishop back, and after the e4, let's say you castle here, to bishop d3, you go bishop h5, pinning this knight. Let's say he pushes the e5 pawn, attacking your knight, just centralize your knight, and then continue to play. Here, there's another popular line in the Slav defense. After knight f6, knight c3, d takes e4. Here white goes e4 with the idea of grabbing the center, but it allows you to play b5. And here, e5 is not a good idea because you can just centralize your knight. And let's say after white goes something like a4, you can just play e6, maintaining this strong pawn change, and after a takes b5, you can just take this knight, pawn takes, and then you can recapture this pawn. And this pawn structure is quite good for black. Therefore here, a good option for white is to just play bishop e2. Here you go with bishop to g4, developing the bishop, and white goes castle here. Then you can just play e5 with the idea of putting the bishop here. Let's say white goes bishop g5, we just put the bishop here, develop the other knight, and then castle on the king side, and then continue to play. And here you can also play a6 with the idea of supporting the b5 push. So let's say white goes e3, then you can just play b5. White don't want to take because it allows you to recapture and also open up your rook. So he goes something like b3. Then you can just develop your knights per bishop, and after bishop e2, let's say you play e6, white castle here, develop the other knight, and as you can see, you have a good center control. You can also take this knight because all your pawns or on the knight square, and you can develop this bishop and then castle on the king side and then continue to play. And in the Chameleon variation, you should be prepared for the move a4. This is the most aggressive option for white, which does not allow you to play b5. So let's say after something like e6, trying to develop your bishop, let's say white goes bishop g5, pinning your knight, you develop the knight, e3 by white, opening up the bishop, we play queen a5, let's say white goes knight to d2, then you can just play bishop b4, putting more pressure on this knight. Let's say white goes queen c2, then you can just play c5, move your pawn, put the bishop on b7 square to attack along this diagonal, and then castle on the king side and then continue to play. Now let me show you the exchange variation of the Slav defense, which starts off the c takes d5. Don't recapture with the queen because of knight to c3, so you play c takes d5. And here let's say white goes knight c3, developing his knight, you play knight f6, bishop f4, you play knight c6, developing the knight, e3, trying to open up the bishop, you play a6, preventing that move, bishop d3, and here you play bishop g4, attacking the queen, developing with tempo. Let's say white goes knight g2, then you can play e6, develop the bishop, and then castle on the king side, and then continue to play. Since the Slav defense have so much theory, you can also try the Slecter Slav, which is easier to play, and it starts with the move. After knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, you go with g6. This is the Slecter Slav, and after something like, let's say c takes d5, don't take with the knight, because if you take with the knight, then there is e4, which allows white to grab the center. Therefore here you just take with the pawn, and after something like say bishop f4, you can play bishop g7, e3, opening up the bishop. You just castle here, h3, trying to prevent your bishop from winning this knight. Knight c6, you develop the knight, bishop d3, preparing to castle. Let's say you play a6, white castle here, you play bishop f5, offering a trade of bishops. Let's say white takes this bishop, and after you recapture with the pawn, here you have a good pawn structure. Let's say something like knight e5, you can play rook c8, and after something like rook c1, you can play e6, and you have a very good position. So this is a variation which you can use in the Slav defense if you don't want to memorize much moves. Well, there's a popular line in the Slav defense, starts after knight f3, knight f6, and here white goes e3. This is the quiet variation, and it does not allow you to take this pawn because white can just take this pawn with the bishop and have a lead in development. But here you can just go with bishop f5. And now if he tries to play queen to b3, which is a bad move because you can immediately go for queen to b6. Let's say white takes this queen and you recapture, and white goes something like c takes d5, you recapture with the knight. Let's say white goes s3 to prevent something like bishop g4, then you can just play knight to b4, threatening a fourth on c2. Let's say he goes knight to a3, then you can just sacrifice the rook. Now he is forced to take, and then you can fork him, and you will be up a piece, and you are completely winning. Therefore here you have to play something like knight c3. Then you go e6, your bishop is out, and now this is kind of playing London with the black pieces. Let's say white goes something like knight h4, trying to trade your bishop. You just move the bishop back so that if he takes, you can recapture with the h pawn. Let's say he takes your bishop, then you can recapture, and after bishop d2, you can develop the other knight. Let's say he goes g3, trying to fiancé shadow the bishop. Bishop e7, developing the bishop. Let's say white goes b3, solidifying this pawn. You go e5, striking in the center. C takes d5, you recapture in the center. And after white takes, you can take this pawn with the knight. Takes. Let's say white goes bishop g2, attacking this pawn. you can just play knight f6 and the position is quite better for black. When this is not the end, if you want to learn how to play the Queen's Gambit, then you can check out this left video. And if you want to learn some more chess openings, then you can check out this right playlist. And if you don't want to miss more amazing videos like these, then don't forget to subscribe.